So I thought it'd be really useful to go over two example pieces of coursework to focus it in on existing applications and stakeholder sections. Because this is the first two big sections of your coursework, the first two that kind of carry marks, having exemplars to work through will be useful. One of them is a Pac-Man game, and this one, although did do well overall, the analysis was a little bit more shaky because the student didn't really fully understand exactly who they're aiming this project at. They just want to make a Pac-Man game, and you'll see when we look at stakeholders why that made a difference. The other application, which was a stock simulator kind of thing, the stakeholders and the purpose behind it was really clear, and it really then showed in the stakeholders, the research, and absolutely everything. So that one was a much stronger piece of coursework. So without any further ado, let's actually look through those two pieces of coursework. So I'm going to talk you through two pieces of coursework. The reason for this is to give you an indication of what you need to do in order to get good marks. Now, the two pieces of coursework I'm going to show you, both have gone to the exam board. Both have come back as high grades. So the one I'm showing you at the moment got 68 out of 70. And the next one I'm going to show you got 69. So these are good pieces of coursework. So they are good ones to kind of, I won't say replicate, because that's not necessarily the word I'm looking for, but to follow the pattern of. Okay, so what I'm going to do is kind of point out what I'm looking for, and you can actually then visualize it for your own courses. So when you come to do yours, you'll know how much detail I'm looking for. One of the biggest problems I see when I'm marking coursework, especially in the first couple of drafts, is a lack of detail, a lot of precision in what you're writing. Okay, so the first piece of coursework was a remake of Pac-Man. So I've included the project overview here just to give you an indication of what the students are trying to do. Now, the overview is not technically marked, okay? It's not actually in the mark scheme. However, it gives amazing context to your project. It helps you as an individual get exactly what you're trying to achieve clear in your mind first before you start doing the rest of the project. If you haven't got a clear project in your head and you're trying to do this coursework, it comes out really vague and really wishy-washy, and that's where you start to lose marks. So that's one of the reasons why when I first gave you the coursework, I just told you to do the overview. I told you to do nothing else, just the overview, because it forces you to think really carefully about exactly what you're trying to achieve. So this student's making a remake of Pac-Man. So obviously his existing research was to do with Pac-Man. So I'm going to show you one of his. So here he's got an existing app for Pac-Man. Now, because Pac-Man's so simple and this is a very simple application, his description of it is very short. Now, here's the secret here. Your description must cover enough of the kind of ways the application works to give an indication of what this app does. So you can't simply write one sentence and hope for the best. You need to give a bit more detail, okay? And it's the detail we are looking for. Detail shows you've researched this. Detail shows that you've actually used the application. Research shows they've actually gone through it and worked out exactly what you're thinking about taking forward and which bits you are not. So there's no rule on how big this section must be. Okay, so for some people, like this candidate here, it was very short, but yours might be longer. The other thing I want to point out is that please do include screenshots. Screenshots make this section, okay? If you have a few screenshots showing how the features work that you are thinking about putting forwards, then we can see it, we can visualize it, we know what you are talking about. So the next part of this is features he intends to use in his application. Now, this is absolutely crucial because at this stage, you are trying to build up a feature list ready to start programming. The bulk of analysis is where you're going to take a feature, work out what it is, how it's going to work, see if it's computable, make sure that it can actually be coded and how you might actually go about coding and actually research that part of it. So you're ready to actually do a good design for it, okay? A lot of the hard work happens in analysis. It doesn't seem that way when you first start it, but actually that is actually the truth. And I'll come on to that when we start to look at the feature section of analysis. But to get there, we need to have a really clear view of exactly what's going to go into it. Now, you need to make sure you include all the features that you are going to take forward, and for each feature you need a justification. Now, I like tables for this coursework, so I encourage students to use tables. You don't have to. My big caveat is that if you're writing lots and lots of stuff in paragraphs, it becomes hard to pull that information out. And sometimes as a writer, when you're writing it, you might get yourself lost. It's not repeating yourselves or things like that. If it's in a table, you've got a clear feature, clear justification, bang, it's done. Okay, you write less and it's more precise. Okay, so I would strongly encourage you to use tables for this. So here the student has got features with justifications. The second student I'm going to show you has done a essay subject as one of his A-levels. This meant that they were much more used to writing in detail, and hopefully when you start to see the coursework, it will show. Now, this student has written more than necessary. Okay, so when you start going through, you think, oh my word, do I have to write that much? The answer is no. However, you won't be able to escape the fact that there's enough detail in here to make sure he got the marks. Okay, so there's a lot of thought went into this coursework and a lot of effort as well. So what was the coursework? Well, he created a simulator for the stock market. So he took existing stock values and then created a little simulator based around it. So that was his project. One thing that I did encourage him to do is to make it really clear about what he was trying to do, because at the start, when he started this project, he wasn't 100% sure he wanted to do something with the stock market, but didn't know exactly what. And putting extra detail into this introduction helped crystallize the view of what he needs to do. So after this overview, he was much more confident about starting the rest of the coursework. Okay, and again, that is the purpose of the overview in the first place. Just because we can't assume the examiner knows exactly what you are talking about, especially if you've got a bit of a weird and wacky coursework, having some keywords about things like stocks and indexes, you might not know what an index is, the examiner might not either, or the teacher might not, so having a little keyword bank helps. It's just really there to make the rest of the coursework easier to read. Now you probably think, what's the point? Maybe they could just look it up. You got to remember is that anything we do to make the reader's life easier means that they're much more likely to give you a higher mark, because they know they can see the effort gone into it. Okay, so don't cut corners. Okay, don't cut corners. It's worthwhile spending a little extra 10 minutes writing up things like that than it is not to. So that's my bit of tip there. Anyway, so this student has opted to do a case study instead. No one said it had to be titled existing applications, and I think case studies in this scenario works incredibly well. Okay, so there's no rules on how you lay out this coursework as long as the information's there. So here's got Investopedia, stock market simulator, and here he's got a link to it, so it's nice and clear. Remember I said about screenshots, say 1,000 words. Here's a screenshot of the application. Now straight away when we start to go through, you can see he's talked about all the key features. He's given a kind of a mini review of the tool to show how it works. He's talking about all the different parts of it, and he's gone to a lot more detail. Now, the detail here was actually necessary because this is a much more complicated tool. It's not Pac-Man. Pac-Man is Pac-Man, isn't it? However, this is a kind of tool which is used by traders. Okay, you would imagine it to be a bit more complicated, so we'd expect this to be more detailed. Now obviously it's not a full review of this application. It's not gone through absolutely everything you could possibly do. He's not talking about Bollinger Bands or anything like that. He doesn't need to. Okay, he's focusing in the bits that are important for his project. Okay, so he's talked about sorted tabs, news feeds and things like that. Then he's got an evaluation of features. Here what he's done is said whether it's useful or not useful. That's fine. You know, it's still very clear, but notice he's used a table. Again, makes it easy to read. So here's got charts, useful. This is an essential part of all trading applications, as it's often the primary tool that users use when buying and selling stocks. Okay, so he's talked about why he's going to include it. He's given details. Why is it useful? How is it going to be used? Notice that this student has put a lot more detail in there. This really helps give evidence to me to award him top marks. Okay, so don't skimp on information. Give me as much as you can do. Okay, I don't need you to write millions and millions of lines, but try and give me more detail. I said he wrote more than he needed to, but there's no doubt this student's top marks is there. Okay, just reading it, you can tell. So same things for the other ones, and then he did a second application very similar way. Now, stakeholders is a section where people really struggle, okay? Because it's not obvious what we want you to write, okay? Even though I have described to you in another video exactly what I'm looking for, it's really hard to visualize it. This is even harder for games. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the stakeholders for the stock market coursework, and again for the Pac-Man project, and hopefully you get the idea of what I'm looking for. Now, remember, stakeholder is someone who's got an interest in the application, and what I'm really looking for is who is going to be using this. Now, in order for your project to be successful, there has to be a point to it. Okay, and again, you need to make sure your overview, you've made it clear what's the purpose behind it. Why would people want to use it? If people don't want to use your application, there's no need to use your application, then what's the point writing it? You know, you might as well not bother. You know, so every project must have a purpose. Okay, now in olden times, in the old coursework, we used to have a problem you had to solve. Okay, so it had to solve a problem. Nowadays that's not the case, but it still has to be usable. So it still has to have people who will want to use it for a purpose. So in this case, we got novice traders. So he's focusing on novice traders. So notice he's not just a trader. You know, he's got a stock market simulator, and he's not aimed at all traders. Now you're probably thinking, well, why not? Why can't he? Well, the simple answer to that question is he's not building a full system. He's focusing in on a small part of it. He's doing something for the beginner. Now, this is important because he's now able to focus his attention on that group of people only. That way, his project becomes a lot tighter. So he's focusing on novice traders. That means he doesn't have to worry about advanced features that you might find in other applications. For example, candlestick charts. You know, if you go into any big stock market trading app, you'll find candlestick charts. If you don't know what candlestick chart is, look it up. But long and short of it, he's focusing in on a group of traders, which helps him narrow down his coursework and reduce the scope of it. So he's talking about who they are, talking about what makes them unique. Okay, so they're inexperienced, unlikely to risk personal capital. So he's thinking about them. Okay, so if you're a novice trader, you've probably never traded before. You're not willing to throw your money in the stock market and hope for the best. You're going to be nervous about doing it. So having a simulator to try out your ideas first before going into the real stock market with real money actually makes a big difference. So you notice he's talking about that. He's done some research as well. Here we've got a quote from Boys Will Be Boys, Gender Overconfidence and Common Stock Market Investments. Okay, he's done some wider reading. Okay, so he's read up about traders and who they are and what they need and all that kind of stuff. So he's researched his groups of stakeholders. The mark scheme says for analysis you need to have done thorough research. Okay, no one said this research just is focused in on existing applications. In fact, that is blatantly not true. It shows you research the whole thing, your stakeholders, your features, your existing applications. Every part of analysis has been well researched and reference to prove you have actually researched it. Okay, so this is actually really, really, really important to research your stakeholders. Not only will it make the scope of your stakeholders more narrow, it also helps you get all those marks. So here we've got the last paragraph, which I'm just going to kind of highlight to you. This program is appropriate for the needs of novice traders. So one of the things you have to write about stakeholders is, why is your application going to be useful for the stakeholder? So you explain who they are, you can explain what they will use your application for, and why your application will work for them. So here we'll provide virtual money, so they're not at risk of losing capital. Okay. Also, a program matches their need to have experience using tools used to analyze the trade stocks and become more familiar and comfortable trading. So it gives them that kind of comfort when they're using it. So why would they use your application? Well, here's his justification of why they would use his application. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for why will your app be suitable for them? Okay, why would they want to use your application? Let's come back to the stakeholders for the Pac-Man project. Now, stakeholders for a game is really hard, because a lot of you will want to just simply say teenagers, and that's it. The problem is that that's not how stakeholders work for games. Okay, you don't get multi-billion-dollar games come out and they say, "Oh, I'm going to sell this to a gamer." They target people. They target with their advertisements. So if you think about Grand Theft Auto, for example, who's that targeted at? Is that targeted at little children, or is it targeted at adults? Now you're probably thinking, well, hang on a second, no, surely it's targeted at 18-year-olds. Absolutely not. It's an adult game. It's a game aimed at adults, and there's some good reasons why. Okay, first of all, if you look at the chart here, 27% of gamers are under 18. That means the rest of them are over. So if I was going to make a game with adult themes, I'm obviously going to aim it at that bigger wedge. Now also that bigger wedge will have more disposable income. Okay, so for example, if you're in your 30s, you're much more likely to be able to afford to buy lots of games than an 18-year-old who might not be able to buy so many, or they'd wait for the parents to buy it for them. So stakeholders for games is not obvious. Okay, you've got to think about it a bit more carefully. The age of your gamer has to be selected carefully. So this graph kind of exemplifies what I'm really trying to talk about. So he says, I have a wide range of stakeholders, one of them being students in the age range of 16 to 18-year-olds. This is because I put out a survey to gather information of my version of Pac-Man, and most responses were from 16 to 18-year-olds. Now, that statement is a little bit misleading. So that's not good research. So I'm going to point out why that's not good research. So let's say you do a survey to find out who will play your game, and you send it to all your mates in sixth form. Weirdly enough, all the responses are going to be between 16 and 18, aren't they? So it actually makes it biased, doesn't it? It makes it useless research. So please don't do that. That's not helpful. So that didn't get him a mark at all. Also, data collected from gamers would wide illustrations that 27% of the game community is made up of players 18 or younger. This is the second largest game group of things. So it is, I mean, he is true there. So he's actually pulled that information out. Although the highest is between 18 and 15-year-olds, I'm at 16 and 18-year-olds because my game is more of a casual game rather than a video game that people spend a lot of time on. And I believe that people in my target audience benefit more from program than 13, 8-year-olds. Okay, so that's a bit of a waffle. Okay, he's not really said why. He's focusing on 16 to 18-year-olds because he wants to. Okay, that's what I read from that. So please don't write like that. Okay, he could have given a better definition of why. However, he hasn't. Now, he's then talk about reasons why he might want to target. Now, this is a bit more relevant. Okay, so he's talking about school stress. Okay, so if you are stressed when you're doing your A-levels, for example, maybe you just want a quick game to kind of take your mind off things and then get back to it. Okay, you can't really afford to play a big long game. because that will take 3-4 hours up. But a quick game Pac-Man, bang, you're back to work again. So that is actually a relevant point and a better justification. Okay, so this is better. Then he's got why is it suitable for their needs. So he's really started to think about stress now. Now, if he started off with that up here and used that as his kind of focus for his application, his stakeholder, then it would have been a lot better. However, that's not what he did. So this section isn't as good as the one you saw previously, and this is why having a very clear stakeholder is really important. Stakeholders for games is much harder. So again, he's talked about why will you use their program, why it's suitable for their needs. So although this is a bit shaky, he's done enough to get the marks in stakeholders, even though some of it's not relevant. Okay, so he's long short, he's kind of redeemed himself later on.